Hey there. In this video, you're going to learn about a brand new way to call tools from models using Ollama. How brand new? Well, it was just merged into the product and demoed on July 18th, but some folks have the wrong idea about where it is now and how it works. I think you're being intentionally obtuse. That's what somebody sent me on Twitter. Oh, sorry, X, the other day. I was responding to a couple of messages by these two folks on the topic of function calling. The other person said, "You clearly don't know what you're talking about." I don't want to gloat, but I kind of do know what I'm talking about. And these folks were just, well, flat out wrong. But I hope they stick around and watch this to see why. So let's get into it. On July 18th, Ollama had its one-year birthday party at GitHub's offices in San Francisco. Although I left the team in January, they were nice enough to fly me out to San Francisco to be there to be part of this celebration. I was very excited to see everyone, and even more excited because I got this cute little llama. Well, according to the label, it's an alpaca. Getting stuck there for an extra day due to CrowdStrike, not so fun, but still. The overall time spent with the team was fantastic. One of the new features that was announced was tool use and function calling. Now, a lot of folks seem to be really excited about this. The fact that this feature was added to OpenAI several months ago is now available in Ollama. Now, the only problem with this, as many of you probably already know, is that function calling and tool use has been available in Ollama since about September or October of last year. Lots of folks are using it successfully. In fact, I have two videos that show you how to perform function calling in Ollama with multiple tools, and even provide lots of examples for how to do this. So then, what's actually new in this new feature? What was added in the PR called tools that got merged a few weeks ago? In the fine-tuning process, a lot of models will now include functions and function outputs as part of the fine-tuning. This means that as long as you provide some sort of prompt with the right format, the model will know that you're talking about tools and will respond with the correct tool to use, as well as its parameters. This sounds great, but it does require very specific models to be used. In fact, I was kind of excited about this new way of doing things. Having a very specific format to define the functions means there's less wishy-washiness when creating the prompt. And being able to supply the list of functions and their parameters to the model outside of the prompt becomes super interesting. I think that's probably what a lot of people were thinking when they saw this new feature being added. I would assume that Aaron and Alonso and Pietro and others probably all thought that. Hence the message that talked about the benefits that abstracting the tool definitions and call parsing into the API layer obviously bring. But what happens when we assume? Exactly. When we use Ollama in debug mode, we see exactly what's happening. The API is taking that set of definitions of tools in the messages, but then just reformatting them as part of the prompt for the model. In fact, the prompt also specifies that the model should respond as JSON. The only difference is that we don't have to specify format JSON. Well, that's not entirely true. The other difference is that this only works with a small subset of models. And even models that have been set up to work with this process don't always work. In some experiments with Mistral, it worked 80% of the time. With Llama 3.1, there were certain calls that just never worked. I had similar experiences with Fire Functions v2 as well. Now, it may just be that we're early in the process for these models. If you need something that works today 100% of the time, I would suggest using that older method that's worked for ages. I'll link to the two videos that talk about that below. If you want to help make Ollama better, help report more of the cases where this fails. If you have to use the OpenAI compatible API, then unfortunately you just have to use the latter option and just report the problems. If you ignore the errors, then the Ollama team might not ever learn about your issue and never fix it. So let's take a look at how to use this. The new tool use feature works with the OpenAI compatible API as well as the chat endpoint in the native API. I don't think it works with generate. In most cases, I prefer to use generate because it's simpler, so hopefully it comes there too. I'll start by defining a new function that simply calls an online API that gets the weather based on a latitude and longitude. That spits out a phrase that says the current temperature in that location. I'll also define another function that calls a different API that gets the latitude and longitude from a city name, then passes the results into the weather function. So now I can set the model to use and a prompt, such as what is the weather in Paris? Then I'll add that to a simple messages block. Now I can call Ollama.chat, passing the model, the messages, don't stream it, and then the definition of my tools. So this block has two tools. We have to say type is function. I don't know if there are other types that can go here. Well, then we set the name of the function, a description, and the parameters. For parameters, we can list each one and a description. In this example, the parameters are simple strings, but in the original PR, Mike shows an example where one of them can be an enum of either Fahrenheit or Celsius, which is pretty cool. Finally, we specify an array of required parameters. When the model returns, push the response message to the messages object, and if the response message includes a tools calls parameter, then call the appropriate function. The results of that function should be added to the messages object with a role of tool. Then you can call the model again to get a cleaned up answer to the question if you want it, or just print out the answer. To find the right models to use for this, you can go to Ollama.com, then models, and sort by newest. It would be nice to be able to filter by tags such as tools, but that isn't available yet. Now find the models that have a tools tag or category. As of the recording of this video, that includes Mistral Large, Llama 3.1, Mistral Nemo, Fire Function v2, Llama 3 Grok Tool Use, Command R+, Mixtral, and Mistral. Let's try this code with Fire Function -v2. This took a while to load, but the output I got was the weather in Paris right now is 67.4 degrees Fahrenheit, and the sky is clear. The high for today will be around 73.4 degrees Fahrenheit, while the low will be around 61.3 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, this is extremely interesting because the weather tool call only gave it the current temperature, and it made up the other temps. So let's change this to use Llama 3.1. Although the tool ran and returned 67.4 degrees, the model replayed with this. I can't provide any real-time information about the current weather in Paris or any other city. I'm unable to access external information such as current weather conditions. However, I can suggest some ways for you to find out the current weather in Paris. And then it gives me a list of options. I apologize for any confusion my previous response may have caused. And that previous response was here is the tool to call and the parameters to use to get that external information. I tried this for Mistral and got this response. The current temperature in Paris is approximately 67.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Enjoy your trip. This was the one model that responded correctly, but try it a few times and then it fails randomly. When I ran basically the same examples using the previous process, I ran every model I had hundreds of times, and I couldn't get it to fail ever. So back to those folks at the beginning. Am I upset? No, they had bad information and were going on what they knew. Essentially, they didn't know what they didn't know. And hopefully they'll watch this and see how things actually work. I hope they don't jump to insults, but who knows? I'm sure that with some time and some more revisions in the Ollama product, what they said will actually be true. What do you think of this new approach? Do you like it, even if it works less often? I look forward to the inevitable improvements coming down the line. Here's the video I mentioned about the old way of doing things, and here's the link to subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for being here. Goodbye. No water.